Hi everyone, this video is going to be a little bit different. I'm just going to quickly show you a few photographs and then I'm going to tell you a story. So what I've just shown you are 3 different pictures of the same train taken on the same day at 3 different locations. I know a lot of you will have a pretty good idea of what sort of effort goes into taking a series of pictures like this, but for those of you who don't normally spend entire days out photographing trains, it might not be immediately obvious what's involved. So I thought I'd make this video to show you a bit of the logistics behind this particular type of railway photography. Chasing trains is a pretty major part of railway enthusiast culture in Australia, and when I say chasing, I mean literally chasing, getting ahead of a single train multiple times in order to photograph it at multiple locations, typically with the assistance of an automobile. Chasing special trains by road can be a lot of fun. Doing it well requires careful planning, a good knowledge of back roads along the route, and a knowledge of the line itself. It's very helpful to know where the train might stop or wait or run slowly, and that's before we even get to photographic planning, knowing where the sun is going to be, where the clear shots are, and what historic or interesting features can be included. Chasing a train by road can also be pretty stressful and sometimes even a bit dangerous when an interesting train draws large numbers of photographers out on small country roads. However, there is another way. In some circumstances, it is possible to leave the car at home and chase a train by train. On the 2025 King's Birthday long weekend, Steamrail Victoria ran a 4-day trip to northern Victoria, running a series of local shuttles out of Echuca and Bendigo. Hauling the train were 1951 built 464 Hudson R761 and 1957 built diesel-electric EMD Streamliner S301. Steamrail is based at the Newport Workshops in Melbourne, so a lengthy transfer run was required for the 162 kilometres up to Bendigo, and it's this transfer that I chased on Friday the 6th of June. By my calculations, comparing the special train's timetable to the public passenger timetables, it would be possible to photograph this train in as many as 5 different locations using only public transport, and I'll get into the reasons for that as we go along. This here is what my plan looked like. Don't worry, I can't read my handwriting either. Being a weekday, this transfer move was timetabled to operate between the peaks, leaving Newport around 10:30 AM, allowing something of a sleep in as far as these things go. The first leg of the special was from the workshops into Southern Cross Station to pick up passengers before reversing direction to head out to Bendigo. While essentially just a transfer of rolling stock, Steamrail does sell tickets on these runs, and they're actually a very good option if you're looking for a quieter, more laid-back trip compared to the main events. This move into the city and back creates the first and most obvious opportunity to get ahead of the train, as it's possible to photograph the leg from Newport to the city, then head up the Sunbury line via Footscray while the train is at Southern Cross. The first location we picked was Spotswood, the first station out of Newport towards the city. We chose this location because of its nice historic brick buildings and also the fact that this station is due to be completely rebuilt by the level crossing removal project in the next few years, so it won't look like this for very much longer. As you've no doubt already noticed, this was a pretty grim winter morning. It was grey, dark and cold, and not exactly the conditions I would choose for good photography. If the primary aim was getting nice shots of this location, we would have planned it around the weather. But when the aim is pursuing a specific train, you don't get that luxury. Bang on time at 10:30, we see R761 leading the train 10 to first, followed by S301 and 14 cars. As you can see, it's a long and interesting consist. If you're curious about specific details of the cars making up this train, I'll put that in the video description down below. Given the conditions, I don't mind this shot. It shows the buildings and the 1920s overhead wiring gantry, which definitely won't survive the grade separation, and there's an aeroplane photo bomb, which is always nice. A 787, possibly? I'm sure someone will correct me if I'm wrong. We then hopped on the following suburban train and went to Footscray, where I found $5 on the ground. Hey look, $5 on the ground. Which I didn't film, this is a reenactment. Then we made a crucial detour to get some Footscray jam donuts, which I did film. It actually would have been possible to follow the special into Southern Cross, get pictures of it there during the 43-minute layover, and still get back out ahead of it, but that wouldn't have left time for donuts. We rode this Commenge set out to Keilor Plains, which was a new station built as part of the electrification to Water Gardens in 2002. Keilor Plains is definitely up there with the most beautiful stations in Melbourne. It's really just lovely. We actually picked this spot because last time I was there, it was one of the few remaining spots on the line with no fencing, allowing a much nicer looking shot. However, the whole section is now fenced, and we had to make do with shooting over the fence from this rather grim corner of the commuter car park. At this point, we learned that the special had been delayed by about 12 minutes leaving Southern Cross, which might not sound like much, but did raise some concerns about the rest of our plan for the day, as small delays on these sorts of trips can quickly become big ones if the train misses its path, its slot in the timetable, which can result in it being held to let other trains pass earlier than planned. Luckily, there were plenty of other trains to keep us occupied in the meantime. Observant viewers will notice the R-Class was only steaming very lightly there, but the S is giving the train a real shove. Despite the gloom and general Keilor Plains aesthetic, I'm actually quite happy with this shot. It's got the distinctive Western Plains basalt rock piled up beside the line, the wintry conditions are letting the steam linger in the air, and it's blowing across the darker clouds behind. R761's incredibly slick coat of black paint is also reflecting the sky behind us on its smokebox door. While we never hoped for gloom like this, it did also allow us to choose this location on the west side of the line, which would have been wrong side if the sun was out. We then headed back to the station and jumped on the next suburban train to Sunbury, which was running a few minutes late, having caught up to the special ahead. At Sunbury, we would change to the following V-Line Bendigo train, which was due to overtake the special a bit further along. Our timetabled connection at Sunbury was only a couple of minutes, but we knew we wouldn't miss it as the V-Line train would be stuck behind our suburban train until we got to Sunbury anyway. This is a good little example of how understanding the track and signalling layout can be very helpful as a passenger. There's no real other way of knowing if a connection is guaranteed or not in a situation like this. At Sunbury, we made our way in fast forward to the opposite platform. Hey look, it's the new type of marquee barrier. First time I've used one.
Your next service to depart from platform 1 will be the 12:35 Bendigo, stopping all stations to Bendigo.
Our Bendigo train was formed by 3-car velocity unit VL 116, one of the newest trains in the state, having ended service just over a year ago. This train was scheduled to overtake the special at Gisborne, and our plan was to get ahead to our third location at Wood End. However, it was at this point that the plan started to go slightly pear-shaped. The line beyond Sunbury requires some very tight timetabling of special trains due to a number of factors. For one thing, the speed limit is 160 km per hour, which the regular velocity DMUs operate at on an hourly frequency at this time of day. The special, meanwhile, is limited to 80 km per hour, half the line speed. This isn't a physical constraint of the train itself. Both the R and the S-Class have a top speed of 115 km per hour, and that's the speed they would have traditionally run at with a passenger train on this line. However, there's a couple of modern rules which restrict the train to 80 in this case. One of them is a blanket speed limit on wooden-bodied passenger cars as a crashworthiness measure, and the other is a restriction on trains that are not fitted with the train protection warning system equipment, which is a type of active signal protection in an area with TPWS-equipped signals. Also, this ELX coal wagon is limited to 80 km per hour too. All three of those restrictions apply here, but if hauling entirely steel-bodied cars on a line without TPWS and without any other speed-limited vehicles in the train, the R-Class are still allowed to run at 115. In addition to the restricted top speed, trains leaving Sunbury on the down are faced by the Sunbury Bank, a lengthy climb of 1 in 50, and the line continues to climb to various degrees for the next 35 odd kilometres all the way to the other side of Macedon, so the heavy steam-hauled special would be working very hard and doing less than 80 anyway. The line between Sunbury and Kyneton is double track and bidirectional, so trains can run in either direction on either track, allowing some ability to overtake. However, there's only one set of crossovers in the middle at Gisborne, and this restricts how useful that bidirectionality actually is. What was supposed to happen here is that the special would get to Gisborne in time to cross over and wait on the other track, allowing the Bendigo train with us on it to pass. However, the small delay was enough that our train was now closely following the special up the hill from Sunbury, and we couldn't overtake on the other track because there was also an up Bendigo train in the section.
Ladies and gentlemen, apologies for the short delay here. We're just waiting on the signal to change colour. Ladies and gentlemen, once again I do apologise for this delay. I've just found out the reason why we were stopped earlier and why we are sitting here at the moment on the red signal. We do have a steam heritage train in front of us.
After a couple of short waits and a bit of slow running, we made it a little late into Gisborne, where the special was waiting in the other platform for us to overtake.
Ladies and gentlemen, service now arriving into Gisborne. Gisborne next stop. Thank you. Here we go.
Our train then had a clear run to Wood End, our next planned location. Wood End is a lovely old station with a nice historic footbridge, which we set up on to wait for the train. By the way, Wood End is 580 metres above sea level, it's June, and despite being early afternoon, it was about 8 degrees Celsius at this point. Just waiting for a train. It was about this moment that we got news that the special hadn't left Gisborne yet, and was being held to follow the next Bendigo train in about 45 minutes' time. While obviously a bit annoying for the passengers on the special, this is in fact a smart move to get the train back where it should be relative to other trains, just an hour later in the timetable than originally planned. When this kind of thing happens in a Victorian country town, there's only one thing to do. Back on the footbridge, we watched the velocities come and go, and also the sun. On days like this, it's a total gamble what kind of lighting you might get when the train is only going to be in view for a few seconds. Luckily for us, the clouds decided to do the right thing and move out the way just as the special came into view. And now running downhill, it was moving. This was pretty clearly the best shot of the day. It was the only one with decent lighting and probably the most visually interesting location. I'm always a fan of shots where the train is naturally framed by shadows and the surrounding scenery, and I like how you can see the shadows of us photographers standing on the footbridge. The reverse shot was pretty decent here too. Our original plan was to continue from here on the next V-Line train, which would overtake the special again at Castlemaine, giving us one more location. However, with the late running, we decided to call it a day. And as the weather was looking increasingly ominous, the odds of getting any more good lighting were getting slim. So it was back on the next up train to Melbourne. That flashing and partly off headlight is an annoying frequency issue with the lights flickering out of sync with the camera's shutter speed. It doesn't look like that to the naked eye. Also, this is VL 116 again, the same train we arrived here on, which had been to Bendigo and back in the meantime. So hopefully that gives you a little insight into what can be involved with taking a relatively small number of photographs of a specific train, and that there are opportunities to conduct a chase like this in Victoria without the use of a car. While the main goal of this trip was photographing the special, something I always do is photograph all the other trains in between as well. They too will one day be historic. I'm going to leave you with a few of those photos, and thank you very much for watching.